Hello, classmates and Dr. Scholke. I am sorry that I cannot attend tonight's class session. I have a baseball game that I am probably currently playing in, but I would still like to share my book presentation with you through this short video clip. The book I read is called A Hole in My Life by Jack Gantos. First off, I would like to share my personal opinion on the book. I thought it was a great read. It kind of suited my reading tendencies because I enjoy reading autobiographies, normally sports autobiographies. So this was a nice change up. But this is in fact an autobiography of the life of Jack Gantos and his experiences. It was a book that at first I felt like I was being forced to read from the assignment. As I kept reading it, it did not feel like forced reading. It felt like something I wanted to read and continue to find out how the story unraveled. And that is why I enjoyed reading this book. I kept wanting to pick it back up and finish it. And at the end, I kind of wish the story still went on about his life. But I guess all good stories have to come to an end. But it was a great read. And now we'll get into more detail about the book. A quick summary. The Hole in My Life is an autobiography, like I had mentioned before, telling the life story of Gantos' adventure and his run-in with the law. Gantos served 15 months in prison for smuggling drugs. The drugs he was smuggling is called hashish. I will get into what that is later in the presentation. 15 months was all he needed to make realizations and turn around his troubled life. This story tells about his final year of high school, his time as a criminal, and his time in prison. This award-winning book explains how a passion for writing helped dig Gantos out of the biggest hole in his life. And piggybacking off that, going a little bit more into detail, the story isn't really focused on, oh, he spent a lot of time in prison and now he is an award-winning author, but it focuses more on what was going through his mind during that time and how his life changed through that event and how his passion for writing grew through an event like this in his life. I'm now going to show you a video clip and that'll explain a little more into detail about his life. Alrighty, hopefully that gave you a little more detail on what the book is about and what you're getting into if you're now interested in reading that, let's get back to the slideshow here. Next, I just wanted to share some important facts about the book. It was written in first person, being an autobiography, and I think that plays a huge role in kids wanting to read it and it being a young adult book. I think that kids can relate more to it, and I will follow up on that and touch more on that later in the slideshow. Next, I wanted to make it apparent that the book is set in 1971. Well, 1971 is actually when he went to prison, so it tells about his senior year of high school before that, and then his life as a criminal, and then in 1971, that was when he was caught and sent to prison. So it flashbacks a little bit before that. Jack Gantos went to prison for helping sell a 60-foot yacht loaded with a ton of hashish from Virgin Islands to New York City, where he and his partners sold the drug. Like I said, later I will get into what hashish is if you are not familiar with it. This book won the Michael L. Prince Award in 2003, and Gantos had aspirations to become a writer before he went to prison. Now, that is one fact that I definitely want to highlight, because I think that is a big part of the story, that going to prison, he did not realize in prison that he wanted to be a writer. He had aspirations before that, and like the video said, with the drug smuggling, he saw the $10,000 reward, and that money kind of lit up his eyes, and he figured, why not? So that's how he got into kind of that mix, was for the money. But he had always wanted to be a writer before he got in trouble with the law. There's just a slide. I want to give you some information about Jack Gantos. He was born in Mount Pleasant, Pennsylvania. Down here on the left-hand side of the screen, it says has written books for all ages. I think it is important to highlight this because he has written young adult books, books for adults, and books for children, such as picture books and other sorts. On the right-hand side of the screen, he published his first children's book, Rotten Ralph, in 1976. I wanted to note this because it was 5 years after getting out of prison, which took place in 1971, and highlighted a children's book, which was a big part of all of his work. And then the quote in the middle bottom of the screen, it reads, led to a sentence of up to 6 years in prison, where in a lonely yellow walled cell, Jack finally becomes a writer. And in his book, he talks a lot about spending time in prison, kind of enhanced his inspiration to become a writer and follow his dreams. And he knew that's kind of what he wanted to do. So I thought that was an important quote to add in the presentation. Getting into what is hashish, I thought this was important because is the biggest reason of why he went to prison in the first place. If you're not familiar with it, hashish is a sticky resin that is made from the flower of a cannabis plant. It contains THC, which gives a person who smokes it a feeling of euphoria, a happy or feel good. Hashish comes from an Arabic word meaning dry weed. That is something that you're probably more familiar with the term, but it is simply that itself. I just wanted to kind of give you an idea if you were confused on that, to help you follow along of what kind of criminal work he was getting into. Obviously nowadays it is more common to find this, but back then you can obviously get in trouble, which he did. Who is this a good book for? In my opinion, I believe high school age students or young adults is what this book was targeted for, and my reason supporting it is an inspirational story. Kids in high school are looking for something to kind of almost inspire themselves off. This is a story of a man who followed his dreams, and even though he made mistakes in his life, he learned that it did not define who he was as a person, and he continued to push through that, and he made better decisions as life went on. And that one decision that he made affected his life in a positive way. So I think that is something that is good for young adults and high school age kids to learn from. They need to know that mistakes are going to happen, but it needs to be something they learn from and they do not make the same mistake again. High school is a prime age for kids to become serious about drug use. I think it is important for them to hear this message that Gantos is delivering. And facing reality, it is true that high school kids are around or involved with drugs, and I think it is something that needs to be more talked about in high schools, and high school teachers should not be afraid to offer this book to their students, because it in fact is a big part of their life, and that is why I think this book is good for that age group of students. As I mentioned before, it is written in first person, and that is something that is very important in this book, especially to the reader, as I mentioned, our high school age or a young adult, because it adds credibility, which is my first star up there. Having credibility for the author hearing the story from a person who experienced this, helps the kids relate to it. They don't want to hear a made up story, and they want to know how it actually happened, how it affected that person, and students can relate to this real life scenario. They're surrounded by events like this, maybe not as tragic, but they are indeed around this in their life, and they can relate to it because the person that wrote the story is in fact the one who experienced all of this, and all of the thoughts that were going through his mind went into this work, and I believe that is very important, so kids know exactly how everything went down, and they can understand where the author is coming from. I threw a quote in on the bottom here. It says, "You gotta face the hand you're dealt with and deal with it, and make your problems be the smallest part of who you are." I think that is an extremely inspiring quote, and it fits the story real well. And you're not always going to be in ideal situations in life, but it is one that you have to not make it the biggest part of your life. You have to learn from it and make positive things big parts of your life, which I think Gantos does a great job of explaining and delivering that message throughout the book. Here's just what I wanted to conclude the presentation with. I just wanted to show a picture of someone who is struggling in their life at a young age to figure out what they want to do and who they want to be, and they might have made mistakes. And then the picture on the right is Gantos later in life, who became successful from learning from mistakes and followed his dreams and became an award-winning author of a lot of books. So the quote I have on the bottom reads, "Never too late to change anything." And I think that is relatable to a lot of kids' life. It doesn't have to be a big situation like this. It could be something a lot smaller, but it is something to live by, and it is never too late to change something that you do not like with your life. That concludes my book presentation. Thank you for listening. Once again, I am sorry I cannot attend class. But thank you for listening. A Hole in My Life by Jack Gantos.